Thank you, Jay. Hi, my name is Carrie, and I'm an alcoholic with alcoholism. I just want to say thank you to Elizabeth, who must be a part of your crew, who gave me an opportunity to participate in my own sobriety this evening. And I'm sorry you missed out on our fellow Helle. I hope she comes back and speaks for you in the future. Um, for one, her story is more interesting and a lot funnier than mine. And she's solid. She's got a solid program. I stay close to her. I stay close to people like her, and I learn a lot from her. Um, in the meantime, I'm going to say that I'm an alcoholic because I use alcohol as my medicine, and I have alcoholism because that's the medicine that treats the disease, which is alcoholism, which is my self talking, fault finding, unsatisfiable mind. I'm always complaining and competing and comparing and criticizing, and I'm definitely in the control seat. Spent my whole life sober and drinking on pages 60 through 63. I didn't know somebody wrote it down before I read it. There I was. I'm going to qualify a little bit. I drank for 13 years, every single day, and I've got 5 years, 4 months, and 3 days of sobriety. I didn't grow up drinking. Thank you. Thank you. Yes, every one of those days is precious. And I don't mark time because that doesn't buy me a dang thing. But I will tell you every one of those days that I practice these principles in all my affairs informs the next day when trouble arises within or without me. And certainly it will. And it gives me the confidence that I can do the program instead of go my old way and use my old medicine out. I have four sponsees and I have one sponsor. And let's see, what else do you need to know about me? I don't have a record. That's why my story is not very interesting. I don't have a record of any of the yets. Um, so I didn't lose my job or wreck a car or lose my driver's license. I didn't go to jail. I wasn't hospitalized. However, I rode the line of the ultimate yet for a good number of years, where I really longed to die that alcoholic death. And so I lived in black suicidal depression for years while drinking. And my story is pretty mundane. I started drinking because I married somebody who drank every day, and I just started drinking right alongside him, which means I had 40 years. They say they say you stop maturing when you start using. So some people are 40 years old and they're 13 years old in here. I had the luxury of being able to grow up to be 40 years old. And I worked really hard to learn personal growth and to learn ways of being the best human being I knew how to be and to grab a hold of some of those physical successes that people on the outside count as things that matter. Unfortunately, none of that saved me in drinking. But if I sound like I know a thing or two, that's because I had the advantage of not drinking until I was 40. And, fair enough, that works for me. Um, and so with 5 years sober, I guess I'm 45. And so I'm de-aging since I'm an alcoholic. That's good. I'm going to look at it that way. Um, but yeah, I married someone who turned out to be psychologically and emotionally abusive. And as my soul and my spirit, and I thought I had a pretty good spiritual life before, were being dismantled. I have to say it was pretty painful. And since I was already dosing the medicine every day, well, guess what? I dosed it some more. And so because I had that medicine, I didn't have the real medicine, which is the simple kit of spiritual tools that have been laid at our feet. And because I didn't have the real medicine, I couldn't let go of that medicine. So it was a pretty vicious cycle. And so I stayed stuck there for a long number of years, embarrassingly so for somebody who's intelligent and informed and mature and strong and successful. with every capability to walk out the door. And yet there I was, um, pinned in my ugly life. Um, but for the grace, I was given a son, and I decided one day between me and whatever would listen that my happiness wasn't required in order to remain here on this planet and to be of service to him and make sure that he had a mother and somebody to provide for him until he could provide for himself. And so I stubbornly stayed here against every drive, sometimes by the minute, every day for years, because of that boy. Um, Somewhere along the line, I hit a wall and I got on my knees at the altar of peace. Now, I didn't really know what that meant because I'd never tasted peace. I'd experienced a lot of things, but peace wasn't one of them. I understood that it was a real thing and I believed in it as a concept. I didn't know yet what it felt like, but I thought, if I don't get me some of this, I don't think this stubborn will is going to keep me on this planet much longer. So I got on my knees at the altar of peace and I said, "Hey, God, if you're out there," because I'd long since lost touch. Um, you can have anything. You can have my professional life. You can have my house, my marriage, my cars. Um, but I got to have this peace. So notice I didn't list alcohol. I didn't mean to give up alcohol. I tracked my drinking every single day for 10 of those 13 years, actually, and I added them up for the week and averaged them for the quarter and the year. And I was bound and determined to get it down to a reasonable number, because I'm a very willful person. Self-will run riot is an understatement to describe the way I lived my entire life, both before I started drinking and after. And so I take that M dash in the first step pretty dang seriously. Sure, I'm powerless over alcohol, dash, new thought, new concept. My life has become unmanageable. That's my life. My life is what I perceive it to be. My life is therefore my thought life. My thought life was unmanageable long before I took that first drink. And when I did, what ease and comfort came at once. And so there I was off to the races, just like that. So none of us are safe. No, there are no guarantees for any of us on this planet, and I wasn't either. And so, there I was at the altar of peace, and I had some divine direction to work this workbook called The Artist's Way at Work, because I knew it was a transition time in my life, and I didn't know what else to do. And before I even knew this was a thing, I thought, do the next right thing in front of you. And I like that book because it's spiritual in behind the scenes, and it's brilliantly written to give you an open mind for a new experience. And I decided to surrender to that book and that process, just as I had surrendered to peace. And I decided that whatever it said to do, I was going to do it. No excuses. No, that's beneath me. No, I can just think about it and that counts. And so I was cruising along in that book and I started it in January. And on March 24th, 2019, I did a writing assignment. I wonder, write for 20 minutes. I wonder. Now, I'm the kind of person can wonder some pretty grandiose things that are actually realistic for me and within my reach. But I didn't wonder any of those things. I wondered, what if I didn't drink alcohol for a year? And I was like, well, who wrote that on my page? That was not my intention. And so I kept writing for 20 minutes, because that was the assignment, on how that couldn't be. The backyard barbecues, the weddings, the funerals, the concerts, the wine alley culture in my neighborhood. And I put that pen down. And after 10 years of tracking and 13 years of daily drinking and my complete inability to do anything about the alcohol, my drinking was lifted, but for the grace. Lifted. And I knew. I put that pen down and I knew I was done. And I looked up and I said, thank you. And so one of the other things in that workbook is that you have to take a field trip every week, and your field trip cannot be certification oriented or goal oriented. It has to be a mind opening experience. So because I'm not Catholic, one of my field trips is I went to a Catholic mass. It could be go sit under a tree and draw flowers in a park for an hour, but you had to take a field trip every week. And so 9 days in, I'm not drinking. I decided, you know what? My field trip is I'm going to go hunt up one of those AA meetings and I'm going to go to one of those. That's going to be my field trip. Now, no plan on getting into Alcoholics Anonymous for a variety of reasons. I'm sure if I listed them, you would laugh at me because, maybe you had those thoughts yourself. But I was going to follow the directions and go on my field trip. And so I walked into this room, and I want you to picture I'm face down on a massage table for 2 hours before I walked in the room. I'm 9 days dry at this point. And I say dry because to me, dry and sober are incredibly different things, night and day, actually. And I looked pretty rugged. I had no makeup on. I threw on crappy clothes. My hair dried while on the table, and she did scalp massage. So picture that. And I get into that meeting and I'm running late. And when they ask me who I am, I just say Carrie. I don't say the things that make you think I have any experience. So all eyes on me. Look at her. She looks pretty rough. I think they thought if we don't get a hold of her, she's going to die tonight, man. She looks rugged. And so I sat in that meeting and all kinds of different people in there. Some of them didn't have all their teeth, some fresh out of jail. And I thought, well, this is an interesting collection of humans. But I noticed there was more honesty in that hour than I'd seen in my entire life from people together, and more different kind of people than I'd ever seen collected. And there was an authenticity that touched the core of my soul. And I said, thank you again. And I appreciated it. No plans on going back, by the way. What was that book again? The Artist's Way at Work. There's the Artist's Way and the Artist's Way at Work. So I'm going to suggest the Artist's Way at Work. And so, yeah, so I'm sitting there and I get up and I'm about ready to bolt out the door. And this nice lady named Mary, I swear there's a Mary in every meeting. There's a Mary in every meeting. If there's not a Mary, there's a Teresa. So one of the Marys came up and she said, "Hey, do you need a big book?" And I'm like, "No, no, I can buy my own big book. Thank you. No intention of buying a big book." And she said, "Let me write down some meetings I think you might like." And it was everything I was made of not to say, "No, thank you. I'm never coming back to another meeting." I thought, this stranger was kind to you for no reason, which doesn't happen every day. Why don't you just be polite and let her write the list? And don't throw it in the trash on the way out the door so she can see you. Make sure you throw it away when you get home or on your way home. Because I was married, remember, to a psychological, emotional abuser who was also an active alcoholic. And I don't know if you know how this goes, but alcoholics don't like it when you stop drinking right next to them. And so I was hiding my dryness from my partner. That's hard to do. Yeah, because I didn't want to be taken out at the knees before I fully stood up, if that makes any sense to anybody in this room. And so now I'm sneaking and going to AA meetings, right? And I've never done any of that kind of sneaking in a relationship. So I wasn't very good at it, but I was pulling it off. I didn't come out as going to Alcoholics Anonymous until I'd gone to 2 weeks worth of meetings. And so, as fate would have it, I went to a meeting 6 days a week since, because even though I didn't mean to go back, there was no other place in my life that had that kind of hint of peace. And remember, I got on my knees at the altar of peace, and there it was. God said, "Here it is. Oh, you got to go to an AA meeting to get it." I'm like, okay. So I didn't go on, that was a Monday. I didn't go on a Tuesday because Tuesday is my really long day at work, like all day and all night. But she wrote me down a meeting for every day of the week, 7 days a week. Bless Mary's heart. Yeah, she's still in my community here. And I probably averaged 6 to 9 meetings a week, 5.5 years in. I didn't ever stop finding the benefit of going to Alcoholics Anonymous because everybody in these rooms reminds me of what my problem is, that I have one, because, I have a good forgetter, and what my solution is, more importantly. Now, my home group is Prime Time in Southern California. Now, Prime Time has meetings that are based out of Toronto and Berlin and Northern California and some on the East Coast, New York. We have meetings during the day. We have meetings every night. If you want to see me, come hang out with me. I'm there every night of the week in Prime Time. It's primetimeisnow.com. It's all online. We have some in-person meetings in Southern California too, but Prime Time has a big online following. So it looks like you all are kind of like us. We have people from all over the country and all over the world coming to our meetings, and we're a community and we're a family, and that is my home group. And we emphasize the spiritual kit of tools laid at our feet. We're not shy about that. And so if you hear me talking like that, I get it honest. That's all I know is my experience. So I'm going to share that, my strength and my hope with you tonight with the rest of the time that I have. And so again, it's this mind, it's this stinking thinking that I've got to deal with. That's what makes me drink. Hello, ding, 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 ding. Calls are coming from inside the house. People, places, and things all day long. And the ease and comfort that comes at once when I pick up that drink, yeah, I'm going to need something else for that. And so I don't know if you can relate, but Dr. Harry Tebow, who was the first, I don't know if he was the only, I'm not that good to know really for sure, but he was the first non-alcoholic to be placed on the board of Alcoholics Anonymous. And he was the first and maybe the only, I don't know who's done it since, but he, when medical science was failing alcoholics, completely 100% failure rate with alcoholics, he wrote and published in medical journals his assessments and professional discussion of Alcoholics Anonymous as a worthy treatment for alcoholism. And so Dr. Harry Tebow was very interested in us. He admitted full failure before he found us, and he got to open mind and new experience in his own profession with our spiritual solution, which is pretty much something for a medical doctor who thinks they know it all. Um, and so what he said and what he observed about us is that we're the king baby. Look it up, the king baby. Um, we think we know everything. Um, we can't take a stopping because we're basically royalty, but we have no responsibility. So we have all the power and none of the responsibility. That's the king baby. We can't take a stopping. We can't take a no. We're easy to frustration. We don't tolerate frustration. We want what we want. And quite frankly, we're always in a hurry. We don't slow down. We don't stop and smell the roses. We don't pause when agitated. We're living in a state of restlessness and irritability and discontent, for crying out loud. Of course, we want to ease and comfort. That's miserable. And it's not just because something happens once a year. It's constant. It originates from our mind. Um, our mind, it seems, once the drink is gone, is really the problem. I think that's why the M dash. And so in step one, it says, my life is unmanageable. I'm the same woman sober as I am drinking. Oh, that's terrible because now I can even do it more so because alcohol's not slowing me down and numbing me out. Now I'm like really a force of wreckage because I'm just better at it now. I'm sharper, I'm keener, and cut you off at the knees better now, faster, make better points, take on the debating society and become the president of it, for crying out loud. Talking about ceased fighting anyone and anything. I had to write that down every single day in my journaling for the first year of my sobriety. It was my discipline. I fought everything because I'm really good and I have good ideas and I'm right and I'm going to save the world. If you would just do as I ask, if you would just go where I tell you to go and do what I tell you to do. And so that's my mind. That's my unmanageability. And then it tells us that perhaps a power greater, is there anything more powerful than me? I'm the queen baby. A power greater could restore me to sanity. Now, wait a minute. Are you suggesting that I'm insane? Yes, my thought life is unmanageable. I am insane. Full flight from reality. I'm telling you what, today on my way to my Saturday morning in-person meeting, um, I love cars. Let's just say I love cars. There are two brands of cars that get on my every last nerve. One of them in particular. I see those cars, I start talking in my car. To who? There's nobody in there but God. God's with me all the time. Thank God. But like I'm bitching about this car. It's a brand, not the car in front of me and how they're driving. I'm talking about the brand of car. Like that's what it's like in there. who has that's sane the bandwidth to be aggravated about a brand of car? That's nuts. I'm nuts. Highly functioning nuts, but nuts nonetheless. And so, by the time I get to the meeting, I've found fault with two kinds of brands of cars because they're everywhere. And I get in there and everything in my life is going right. I'm going to tell you what, full disclosure, I work this program like my life depends on it because it does. I get my money's worth out of this big book of Alcoholics Anonymous. I apply the principles in all of my affairs. I take God everywhere with me, the big things, the little things, the good things, the bad things, the annoying brands of cars on the road. God's everywhere. And so, because of that, guess what? I totally know what peace is. I live with it almost all the time. I definitely know what it feels like for extended periods. The promises are coming true for me, and I'm rocketed to the fourth dimension often. That's not a weird concept for me. I get it. When I read that, I go, oh, yeah, I know what that is. I've been there, I've tasted that. And so there I am sitting in this meeting, starts at 10, not 7, like it's a reasonable hour. The room temperature is comfortable, the people are nice, the snacks are good. I got this look on my face like I just bit a lemon for nothing. I'm just sitting there taking up space. I'm like, God, Carrie, don't spread this. Put a smile on your face. I'm like this. And so what do I do? What do I do with that? I lift that up to God and I say, now, God, could you just let me be a channel of peace? Let me bring love because I'm an extension of you. I'm a child of God. The first two words in the Lord's Prayer say it all, Our Father. That means I'm connected to the good stuff. I'm a part of the good stuff. I come from the good stuff. Let that good stuff come through me, please, and take this lemon bite and look off of my face. It's there for no reason, like everything's going good. And just as a side note, when I offered up all that stuff, it was all taken from me in sobriety. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about that in a minute. So basically, my misery, it would seem, was of my own making. The problem is me all day, every day. And so what's the solution? Well, I can find the solution in step 3 of the steps. My will and my life to the care of God as I understand God. And so, in the big book in the 12 and 12, it says like things like God is everything or God is nothing. What is my choice to be? There was nothing left for me to do but to pick up the simple kit of spiritual tools laid at my feet. There is one who has all power. Let that one is God. May you find him, her, it, the light, divine, the universe, our creator source now. And that's why my home group is called Primetime is Now. Now is now. God is here now. Now, right now. I can have God right now. And if I have God right now, the rest of it is just thoughts. It's just ether. It's not even real or tangible. Right now, I can have God. So right now is when I go for God all the time. And then now, because God's not in the future. God's not in the past. I was in the past. There was a whole lot of me in the past, wreaking havoc. With the best intentions too, quite frankly. I was going to save the world with all my great ideas. I was just stepping on the toes of the fellows, and believe it or not, retaliation for seemingly no reason. Hark, what a victim. Why is everybody picking on me? And so during that time, I supported 3 people solely, and my business, which I have a business. I don't have a job. And my business, because of COVID, came crashing down around my ankles and broke apart in a whole bunch of little pieces. I didn't even know what to do, let alone how to do it. But I had to keep it going in the moment that I was in because it paid all the bills for 3 people, and I didn't really have a backup plan for that. And part of the COVID equation was that people quit their jobs and filed for bankruptcy, and I failed to rehire because people would apply and they wouldn't show up for the interviews. So I had to figure out what to do, and then had to figure out how to do, and then I had to do it all by myself, and I was breaking. And so, in a state of terror, blinding, rise in cortisol every single day, there I am trying to rebuild my business while planning for a divorce And I had to rebuild it. I hope I look younger than my age, but I want to promise you I'm not of the age to be techie, and my profession's not techie. So I had to rebuild this whole thing in a virtual way. I had to ultimately integrate several different software platforms, build and work with virtual teams, and I didn't know how to do that, and I didn't know how to even learn how to do that. I didn't know who to ask. And so I got to practice these principles in these affairs. And the way that looked was there's a whole lot of scary going on this afternoon about this thing, but I can do the next right thing in front of me. I'm going to look as far as the end of my nose, and God's going to tell me what to do. I'm going to do that thing. And sometimes God would say, make a phone call, call this person. Sometimes God would say, make a comment at the bank, and things would come to me, and things would come to me, and things would come to me. And lo and behold, 6 months later, I rebuilt the whole thing. And I look back on that time in my life because in the 7th month, I filed for a divorce. And in the 10th month, it was granted. And in the 12th month, I moved out of the house that reminded me of all the trauma. And that was a couple years in sobriety. Thank God I was sober because I could practice these principles in all of my affairs. Thank God I knew the program and I worked it like my life depended on it because it was no longer a luxury. I had to do all the stuff they tell us to do in the moment that I'm in. And that's when I learned from experience, not because I just, read it somewhere. But there is no God in this afternoon. There's only God right here at the end of my nose. And if I do the next right thing, then I'll be in the next moment. And then I can have God in that moment. And God can help me in that moment. God is not going to lay out a series of guarantees for how everything's going to unfold for the next year or the next day or the next 10 years or through my retirement. God's right here, right now. And so I practice all these principles in all of my affairs. And what that shows me is an experience with God. And now, instead of the ease and comfort that comes at once with a drink, I get the miracles that come at once with God in the now. Because really, that's what the simple kit of spiritual tools is. I'm the problem, God's the answer. This whole program, my sponsor, this book, these steps are designed to bring me into thy will be done, not mine. How may I serve? Thank you in all of my affairs. And if I go through step 4, then I'm going to meet my fears. Well, fear is the corroding thread, 1,000 forms of them. I think it says 100, but it feels like 1,000,000. And so during that time, I used to think I had no fears. I got to come face to face with 1,000,000 fears, and I called it the crisis of 1,000 miracles because for every fear, there was a miracle. And when I do step 4, I come face to face with my fears because behind every resentment, if I'm really honest with myself, I'm holding on to that resentment for dear life because I'm using it to protect me from something I'm afraid of. One time I journaled, why am I so afraid to be kind to the person I resent? Well, because I'm afraid they're going to hurt me. And so I realized all of my resentments are serving the same purpose. They're keeping me safe from fears. Well, guess what? That's like alcohol bringing me ease and comfort. It's wildly destructive. It's unmanageability to the hilt. It's insanity. I need a higher power for this. And so when I bring a higher power into this, all of a sudden I can lift that up. I can let that go. And I can be in the now with God. I can extend some kindness, even to the people that I'm pretty sure are wrong. The world and its people. Yeah, they're wrong too. It's not just me, but I don't care about that. I just worry about me. I take care of my side of the street. God takes care of them. Their karma is not my karma. I'm not the great punisher. I don't set everything right in this world. I don't teach people lessons anymore. I make my whole occupation getting right with God all day long in the moment that I'm in. And so when I meet things like I'm laying there face down on the MRI table and I'm in and out of the MRI machine as the breast radiologist is pulling pathology samples from my breast. Because after the failed mammogram and the failed ultrasound and the failed MRI, she's got to see if it's cancer. I'm 5 years sober by then, so it was really recent. And I got program coming out my ears, and I cried one tear came out of this eye, one tear. I said, all right, Carrie, I feel that. That's all right. You can have your feels. And let's get to praying. Thanks. Thank you for this really good doctor. Thank you for the fact that I know this good doctor and that she made an effort to get here on her lunch hour so that while I'm in the MRI, she's here live. I don't have to come back. And she's going to make sure that I get that biopsy right now. And thank you for her being in my life because I know if it's anything, she's going to refer me to the care that I need that is in divine order for me. And if this is positive, thank you, God, for allowing me to use it in your service and to trust you along the way. Thank you, thank you, thank you. That's how I meet calamity with serenity. This is me working the principles in all of my affairs. This is solution. This is not dry. This is sobriety today in my life. Now, fast forward in case anybody wants to say, I hope it's all working out for you. I just want to let you off the hook. Those biopsy results were fine. It all worked out. I can put my attention on other things like speaking at the last minute when my friend Helle is in a different time zone because she's taking care of her 90 something year old mother in a country that's far away from here and it's the middle of the night and hell is tired, you know? God bless her. She'll be back when she's stateside and I bet she'll share with you some really good message. Um, and so the way my day starts every day is I get up and in some order, I used to be so regimented. You know what? Because early sobriety, I needed the regimented. And I would say that was 3 years. So I'm 5.5 years sober almost, 3 years of regimented. But now it includes some collection of, in some order, meditation, prayer, and um, journaling. And so a lot of times I do something called two-way prayer. I learned that from a fellow, twowayprayer.org. And sometimes I just write prayers of thanks. But my journaling always starts, whether it's first, second, or third, I do some spiritual reading, meditation, prayer, journaling, and I do some spiritual reading. So I read the Big Book 5 times. I read the 12 and 12 5 times. I read Mind, Power, Disease by Bob Anderson, because that's a book in our primetime home group of AA. I read the collected writings of Harry Tebow 4 times. I read The Untethered Soul 4 times. I read the Sermon on the Mount 5 times because that's what Bill used to hand out before there was a big book. And when you read that, you're like, I see this in the big book now. I actually write the steps on the side of the page. I'm like, Bill got that. Bill got that. And so that's my spiritual reading. But Helle recommended the Tibetan Book of Living and Dying. The Buddhists believe that if you prepare well for a good death, you're going to live a spiritual life. And so I just finished that this morning. So I'll do some spiritual reading of some sort. Now, other parts of the day, I might read fiction. I might read professional material. I might even go back to some self-help if there's any more for me to dig up. But in the morning, it's spiritual. And my journaling is typically my prayer. It could be the two-way prayer, it could be my kind of prayer. And some of my kind of prayer gets kind of scientific. And so the prayer goes like this, thy will be done. So I'm praying in the affirmative that God's will is already done in my life. How may I serve? So I'm asking for direction. And then thank you. And I start saying thank you for everything I definitely have that's tangible. Thank you for this pen and this paper. I travel with this on an airplane. I don't go anywhere without my paper and my pen. It's very simple. Thank you for the roof over my head and the health of my 2 Labrador retrievers. Thank you for the well-being of my son. Thank you for my physical health today. Thank you for my sobriety. Thank you for the community that I get to live in, the one I told myself I would never be a part of. Nobody was ever going to get my phone number. I was never going to hang out with anybody in AA, by the way. Look how that turned out. Um, and and then I start praying, and this is scientific prayer. I started praying, thank you for the things that I wish were true. Now I've learned there's nothing out of order in God's world. Um, and I've learned that if I look for where God is in something, I can say thank you for it, even if I find it egregious myself through my mere mortal lenses. So I'll start praying for things, not like thank you for me getting this opportunity or thank you for the neighbor finally weeding his yard. I say, thank you for my ability to show up with grace toward other people today, because sometimes I don't. Thank you for the resources and the strength and the spiritual wherewithal to meet calamity with serenity today. So, do I already have these things all the time? No, but I'd like to. So instead of saying, God, will you please give me this stuff? I don't pray want. I pray thanks for already having. So I pray like I already have it. And I pray God's will. Again, I'm praying for the things that God would want me to have, because in the big book it says to be able to use my will to align it with God's will is the proper use of the will. And so I take that very seriously because, I was the boss of me and anybody who would get anywhere near my reach for so long. My self-will had run right. I was playing God in your life and my life and anybody's life who I could touch or influence in any way. And I had to get a new employer. And I had to figure out a way to use all that will, which I got a lot of, and apply it in a better way. And lo and behold, like they say, I am experiencing those 9-step promises. I started experiencing those 9-step promises before I even got into the 9th step, which you're not supposed to be able to do, but I was. And I do live in the 4th dimension and I do experience peace. And I did go through the crisis of 1,000 miracles. I mean, it was a hard year. 2021 was pert near brutal. And yet a blessing to count every minute of every day. In the vast chasm of the unknown, in the black abyss where fear would have ruled. Fear just visited, and I said, there, dear, have a seat. God's in charge. You can be here. I get it. I see it. I see what you see, and God can see things we can't. And so let's just take that, not one day at a time, but one moment at a time. This moment now, where God is. And so then I do the spiritual reading. I do the journaling, which is really prayer for me, two-way prayer or scientific prayer. And I meditate. Sometimes I'm quiet. That's hardest for me. Sometimes I'm doing neck exercises. Sometimes I'm doing breathing exercises. Sometimes I'm saying a mantra. My two favorite mantras are either thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, or I love you, I love you, I love you. And that I love you is either to me or to God. And so when it's to me, I've had to learn. I thought I had good self-esteem and I thought I loved myself plenty, but I realized, I didn't. There weren't enough self-help materials to get that love to be sincere until I got one with God. And then I realized God lives at the core of my being. God animates my very existence. And I'm a child of God and an extension of God. So really, God's in everything. God's in you. God's in that tree out front. God's in my dogs, especially my dogs. And so it's my understanding that God is love if God is anything. And God is pulling with me and for me. In the Sermon on the Mount, it says something like, I hope I don't butcher this, but realizing that the will of God for me is something vital and interesting and good. Like God's not testing me and punishing me. I'm not being transactional with God, trying to do enough good things to wrestle satisfaction out of my experience with God. God's not Santa Claus. God's not a Bush League pinch hitter. When things are really dicey, I go to God. Otherwise, I got this. God's my partner in crime. God's with me all day. I get this jibber jabber conversation with God all day long. Why? Because that's how I practice the principles in all of my affairs. That is how I stay in constant contact. And that's how I get the experiences. Because your words, God bless them, they're good. They've taught me a lot. But until I apply them and practice them and I have an experience of my own, I don't know anything. I can't use it. So I start training. I start disciplining myself to make a spaciousness in my life for this spiritual practice. And it goes like this. Hey, God, look at that dandelion growing up between the crack in the sidewalk. Isn't it amazing the force of nature that you drive? Hey, God, look at that person driving that car of that one brand of car I don't like. Isn't it funny how I'm so critical of something that makes no sense? Who do I think I am? Hey, God, thanks for letting me let that person in instead of gunning up and blocking them out so I can be first. First to where? First to what? I don't even know. I'll get there when you want me to get there. And I'm going to do it with kindness and love. And then when something, Esther Hicks, who talks about Abraham, I think, says, something about contrast, right? So contrast is when something doesn't go the way I think it should. Now, it could be in divine order. There's nothing wrong in God's world, but I don't like it. Um, she says, um, and when there is contrast, I revel in the perfection of my guidance system and I make the adjustment today. And that doesn't mean I make the world to my liking. I use my feelings when I notice contrast and I get fear, I get anger, I get frustration. And I've learned to discipline myself to talk to God about that. And God says, hey, get in this other lane. Or God says, hey, check yourself before you wreck yourself. Or God says, hey, could you apply a little kindness instead of frustration? God might say, get a divorce and get away from the abuser. There's no hope here. You're a child of God. What are you doing? Well, I was being lazy and I was being confused and I was drinking and I didn't have the wherewithal to get up and get out because that was scary and that was going to be work. And God's like, well, time's up, sister. You got to do the work and you can't be lazy and it doesn't matter. Do it scared. But I'm telling you right now, you got work to do and you're not going to do it like this in a drunk puddle. And so, is that my warning there, Jay? I see you unmuting.
5 minutes.
Awesome. Thank you. And so that contrast, that thing that I don't think I like, that thing that's not really going my way, um, teeny tiny little contrasts all day long, right? That's just the truth. And I start practicing bringing God into that. And I go to God with it immediately. And because I have experiences with how that goes for me, like instant gratification, the ease and comfort that comes at once, the stuff comes at once. God doesn't always make me wait years or months or weeks or days. It can be instant. My day turns around when I go to God with something. And so I start practicing in all the little things. And then, okay, so I am 58 and I like cars and I got my favorite car, Finally, it's a year and 4 months old. I rear end a Silverado with a big old trailer hitch on it. It's my fault. I totaled my car with that trailer hitch. Adrenaline goes high, IQ drops. That's what medical science says. Higher the adrenaline, lower the IQ. Our brain is offline for logical thinking. So I can't rely on remembering what all of you said. I can only go to my reflexive knee-jerk behavior. And I've trained myself and disciplined myself to go to God. Instantly upon impact, because I saw it coming in slow motion, foot's on the brake, it's not going to be good enough. I'm like, you know what? Thank you, God, that I'm alive. Thank you, God, that that truck looks like nothing happened to it. Thank you, God, for allowing me to be honest with that driver and with the police when they show up. Thank you, God, that I'm safe. I get out of the truck. The guy, like, I'm thinking he's going to come after me, right? Like, I just hit him. He did nothing wrong. He's like, are you okay? I'm like, yeah, are you? He goes, I'm fine. My truck's fine. Your car doesn't look so good. And that's a pretty nice car. And I'm like, yeah, it was, wasn't it? And then the cops come and I say, um, it's my fault. I looked down. I looked down at my phone, which is the biggest crime in nature, right? And the cop says, you got it AAA? I said, yeah. She goes, I'm not going to tow you out of here because you'll have to get your car out of impound and it'll be stuck over the weekend. I'm just going to let you wait in rush hour traffic till your AAA comes. It might be a while, but I'm going to do that. And I'm not going to write you a ticket today. I didn't ask for that. I rear-ended somebody because I looked at my phone and I fully took responsibility because that's what we do in this program. We take responsibility. Like that's a 10th step right there. Why do I do that? Because I practice it in the little things. And so when the high stakes things come up, like mammograms and MRIs and biopsies and wrecking my dream car, I bring God into everything and I practice these principles. And lo and behold, crisis of 1,000 miracles, living in the fourth dimension, promises everywhere. And so that today is my experience, strength, and hope. It's a far cry from wanting to be dead every minute of every day for years. It's a far cry from drinking every single day. It's a far cry from the hopelessness, the absolute stuckness, and the hopelessness I felt when I got on my knees at the altar of peace. It's a surrendered, magical life. It's as if somebody dropped magical pixie dust all over my life. And every day I just get up curiouser and curiouser about what God's going to bring me today, contrast or otherwise, because no matter what, it's an opportunity. It's an opportunity to see what God looks like in everything, and it's beautiful. So that's all I got. Thank you so much for letting me serve and letting me participate in my own sobriety. I helped myself tonight. I hope I help somebody else. And just really appreciate being able to meet some new faces. So thank you.
Yay. Oh my God, you were amazing.